Hello everyone, Mr. Geiselart here, and today we're going to talk a little bit about factorials. In math, factorials are the product of all positive integers less than or equal to a given positive integer and denoted by that integer and an exclamation point. So, for example, factorial of 7 is written 7 exclamation, which means that it equals 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7, which also equals 5,040. One other thing that's a little bit weird about this is that if you have factorial 0, it's equal to 1. That's just a definition. There's not really a mathematical reasoning for that. It really is just a definition of the factorial of 0. So here I'm going to show you how to do it on your calculator. Whatever number you want to do as the factorial, that's going to be the first thing that you hit. In this case, we want 8 factorial, so you would start off by hitting the number 8, just like we would on a regular calculator. Then you hit the math button. Once you hit the math button, you're going to get a screen that looks like this. Now, what you want to do is you want to get to the probability part of the screen. So that probability is right there. To do that, if you hit the backwards arrow key once, this block here where it's blocked in math will move to probability. And that's what we see in the last one. So after you do that, you'll notice that factorial is the number 4. The easiest way to get that is just press the number 4. When you do that, it'll automatically put it into your calculator like this. So you'll see that it says 8 factorial. Then you're going to hit enter and it will tell you what the actual number is. And that's how you put it into your calculator. Now let's look at some examples where it's not necessarily a number, but it's going to be a variable. In this case, we usually use the variable n when we're talking about this. So the first one says n factorial. Now notice that n factorial just means you're going to take n times n minus 1, which means 1 less than that, times n minus 2, times n minus 3, and eventually these ellipses mean that we're leaving something out. You'll get down to times 3 times 2 times 1. For example, if you were to say that n is equal to 5, and you put it into this formula, you would just get 5, which is n, and then you do 5 minus 1, which is times 4, 5 minus 2, which is times 3. Now, since this is a smaller one, if we put in 5 there, that would be 5 minus 3, which is 2. Now, we've already done the 3 and the 2. Because we don't know how many numbers are in the middle, if n is a small number, then when we get to that 3, 2, 1, we'll just be able to get to the 1, and then that's going to equal 120 when you multiply all those together. Now, what if we don't actually have a value for n? We just kind of want to do this for a general case. Well, at the top we have n plus 1 factorial. Well, n plus 1 factorial is just going to be looking like this. Instead of starting at n, I'm going to start at 1 more than n times n, because that's taking 1 away just like I did before, times n minus 1 times n minus 2, and then so on until we get to times 2 times 1. On the bottom, notice I'm starting at n minus 1. So I have n minus 1 times n minus 2 times whatever we have here until we get to times 2 times 1. Now, it doesn't really matter how many I have in between here, because notice that this is always going to match up with that. So I can cancel out my n minus 1 over n minus 2, or over n minus 1. I can also cancel out n minus 2 over n minus 2, and then everything that's in the middle will cancel out there. 2 cancels out, 1 cancels out. So at this point, the only thing I have left is n plus 1 times n, and that will be my final answer for simplifying that expression. Now let's simplify another expression that might be a little bit more complicated. This one I have n plus 1 factorial squared over n minus 1 factorial times n plus 2 factorial. So again, I'm just going to kind of write this out. We would have n plus 1 times n times n minus 1 times n minus 2, so on, until we get times 2 times 1. Now, that is going to be my first one. Now it's that squared. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to write that out separately. So I'm going to write out n plus 1 times n minus 1 times n minus 2, and we get down to this times 2 times 1. So that's n plus 1 factorial squared. Now on the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do n minus 1 factorial. Well, that's just going to be n minus 1 times n minus 2, and then then we get 2 times 1. And then I'm going to multiply that by n plus 2 factorial. So that's n plus 2 times n minus 1. N plus 1. And then times n minus 1 times n minus 2, and then times 2 times 1. Okay, so now let's see what will cancel out. Well, here I have n minus 1 over n minus 1, n minus 2 over n minus 2, the ellipses, and then times 2 times 1. So all of that will cancel out. Then over here, I have n plus 1 will cancel with n plus 1. N's cancel, n minus 1, n minus 2, all the way down to 2 and 1. So now what am I left with? On top, I'm left with n plus 1 times n over n plus 2. Now, that might look like it could be simplified more, but that's actually as simplified as it can get. So that would be my answer for that. Now, you might see the answer distributed out, so n squared plus n over n plus 2, but those mean the same thing. So that would be your answer for that.